Right, we continue with our study of volume 48, SD48. Now this volume, the theme is on death and mindfulness. It's quite a difficult subject. Imagine we're talking about death for 3 months or 2 months. But there are different aspects which are very interesting. Now the first 2 chapters in this book, totaling 113 pages, and 2 essays on death. One is on karma and the afterlife, where we look at how karma factors in, how our life is dependent on our actions. And then number 2 is death, an early Buddhist perspective. Is more kind of a definition of death. Now essays are meant to be read. You can read them at your own pace. Don't worry about reading everything. If you find some section too technical, too difficult, you just leave it there, leave it aside. Just go on to those parts you can understand and highlight the key ideas, because those key ideas are your anchors. They will connect you back to this study. Then as the years pass, you find that your understanding connects, and then you kind of go deeper. In my own life as a translator, now this is reaching nearly 20 years now. It's about, I think, reaching 18 years. So what I translated first 5 years, I need to revise. There's so much new materials, nicer paragraphing, easier to read, better fonts. So it's very pleasant. Even just to work with the screen is such a pleasant experience. So take your time, read it like life matters, wisdom matters, because we have life, we have a body, but what is important to us is the quality of life. So this is what death is about, really. Death is a reminder, the final reminder of the meaning of life, right? In fact, that will be the title of my talk today, the meaning and purpose of life. Now, if you like, you can say the meaning of death and purpose of life, or you can say meaning and purpose of death even. So we are talking about meaning and purpose in terms of what we are. So Buddhism, the Buddha likes to begin with practical things. What can we know? And then we go from there. The Buddha doesn't begin with something we have no experience, something fictional, something fantastic, like some God idea. Of course, the Buddha does accept the ancient beliefs in gods. The Buddha didn't want to work too much against the people's beliefs, so he said, okay, let's start from where we are. Okay, because there are reasons why people believe in gods. But the Buddha is taking us further than that, beyond all that. So it's a very fascinating study just to look at how the Buddha teaches, right? The Buddha is very compassionate in a sense. He's willing to bend rules but not break them. He's willing to make adjustments to his teachings so that the audience will feel happy. And this idea of happiness is very important. So when we talk about death to our relatives, to others, we should always factor in, we should always talk about the happiness aspect. And this is very important in Buddhism. Love and happiness, joy and love, if you like. For example, currently I'm translating volume 55, Sutta number 3. Actually, Sutta 2, 3, 4, 5, more or less, they're all interconnected. It's a story about this prince called Bodhi, Prince Bodhi. From all these 4 stories, he was apparently a very nasty prince. He got this beautiful palace built, and this palace is so beautiful. It is one commentary described it as like it's floating in the air. I was telling myself, how do you imagine a palace floating in the air? Now, religious language is such that you got to imagine where can you connect. Then I remember in Babylonia, there is the hanging gardens of Babylon, if you remember. the hanging gardens of Babylon. If you look from far away, the gardens of many tiers, like a pyramid, many levels, And it seems to be hanging because the plants are growing around it. And you don't see the bottom, you see plants. So it seems to hang in the air. So I imagine this palace is like that, very fabulous, very beautiful. So the story went that this prince, he is so proud of his palace that he thought of killing the architect so that he won't build any more palaces like that. Can you imagine what gratitude he has? And the good thing is that you have another character. He's, you can call a sidekick if you like, Kasanjika Putta, a kind of his assistant, all right? He is just like someone who assists him. He's a young person. So he confides in him. You see? So this young man, young servant, is the good guy. You see? So in this sutta, I mentioned a lot about the sidekicks. Very interesting. The sidekicks in the various suttas. All right. So he quietly tells the builder. We're not told the name of the builder, the architect, by the way. So he secretly tells the architect, says, your life is in danger. This prince is going to kill you, he's going to blind you. One version says he's going to blind him, and the version says to kill him. So this architect is very clever. I mean, you can't just run away. You see the palace guards everywhere. So he told the prince, he says, I need special wood to build something. So he got this wood. What he did was amazing. Imagine, this is from the Jataka version of the story, It's not science fiction, it's from the Jatakas. And it shows translating suttas can be very interesting. This architect built a wooden bird. That's what the story says. It's like a bird. Actually, it's a flying machine. It can fly. So in other words, it's like a glider, see? So from that kind of story, we can imagine in the Buddha's time, or maybe a few centuries later, where the commentarial stories are told, they knew about aerodynamics, about gliding, So that's amazing. See? Anyway, this architect built this flying bird, big enough to, according to the story, put himself, his wife, and his son, 3 of them. So they went into this wooden bird. It must be quite high up, I suppose. So they flew off. Okay? I imagine it's a glider. I don't think it's very sophisticated with the flapping wings. It's very difficult for a plane to have flapping wings, So he flew in the air and then went to the Himalayas and landed there and started his own kingdom. All right? So that's one version of the story. Anyway, my point is to show you the compassion of the Buddha. Okay? So that's one part of the story. Okay, coming back to the palace now. So this prince, he has this beautiful palace. No one has lived in it yet. Not, what they call that, housebroken yet. So he is a very superstitious guy. So he invites the Buddha and the monks for dana, to give offering, to be the first occupant. In other words, to basically bless the palace now. Now what he did was very interesting next. He spread the whole palace floor with white cloth. Okay? And he was hoping that the Buddha would step on it. Now this is an ancient belief, or superstition rather, that if you cannot have a child, you get a holy man like the Buddha to step on it. You make a wish, you get the Buddha to step on it, and if he does so, you get a child. But then the Buddha looked at his karma and said, this man, because he's done some really terrible things in the past life, he will never have a child in this life. So the Buddha just stood there and didn't do anything. He did not make a move. He didn't say anything. But this is a very embarrassing situation. You see. Whatever he does may reflect badly on either side. You see. So he just stood there quietly. 3 times the prince invited him, "Oh Lord, please step on the cloth." Right? 3 times. 3 times the Buddha just remained silent. But after 3 times, the Buddha has to act. Okay? What did the Buddha do? The Buddha didn't say anything. The sutta says he looks at Ananda. He looks at Ananda, and Ananda knows just what to do. Ananda tells the prince, the Buddha looks to posterity with compassion. The Buddha looks to future generation with compassion. Now, number one, you got to understand this is a royal language. He's talking to a prince, you see. So basically, he's telling the prince, the Buddha won't be able to step on the cloth, right? The reason is because if the Buddha does that, then in the future, all the other monks also have to follow this tradition. So the Buddha doesn't want to be the precedent, you see. He doesn't want to be an example that anyone asks, oh, please step on the cloth that I can have a baby, you know. Then Buddha does that. Because the purpose of the Buddha is not to bring people into the suffering world. His task is to bring people out of the suffering world, you see. So it's quite a long explanation in just one verse, you know. All right, so after that, the Buddha makes a rule. He assembled the monks. So this time the story is from the Vinaya. So you find there are different parts of the sutta, you know, of the Sutta Pitaka. We have different stories. So this time in the Vinaya, the Buddha makes a rule. He says, monks, here's the story, this will happen. Then Prince Bodhi asked me to step and I didn't step on the cloth. Monks should not step on the cloth when the laity believes in all these superstitious things. In fact, the Buddha said lay people are superstitious, mangalika, you know. So the monks should not oblige them in this case. So that's the rule, okay? Then after some time passed, says the Vinaya, there was this woman who had a miscarriage, had no children. So she goes to the monk and said, Bhante, please step on the cloth, you know, I want to have a child. And these monks dare not do it because the Buddha already made the rule. So this woman got very upset, said, oh, these monks, oh, they're so unfeeling and not compassionate and so on and so forth, you know. Now once lay people spread the word like that, make complaints, the Buddha will hang on it. So the message comes back to him. Then the Buddha said, okay, monks, you can step on the cloth when someone requests, a layperson requests, for the sake of blessing. So he does bend the rule a bit. So although he made the rule at first he cannot, then he, in a sense, he seems to change the rule. But actually he didn't change the rule here. What he did was, his first act remains the same, no change. He's not going to step on the cloth. So the meaning is that he does not become the precedent, the example that no one can say, oh, the Buddha stepped on the cloth, so we should do that. No, you can't say that, right? Whereas he tells the monk, the wording of the rule is very important. The rule says, I allow, anujanami, I allow you to step on the cloth for those laity who are mangalika, superstitious, who are looking for blessings. Allow means you don't have to do it. I mean, you can do it if you want. It's up to you. You see how you explain to the family, or maybe you can counsel the family, and so on. In fact, there are other ways, but it is, you can also step if you like, it's up to you. So he leaves to the wisdom of the monks, right? So that's the interesting part. He's willing to adjust the rule. He's not like a demagogue or someone who is very strict to the letter of the law and then talk all kinds of fiery, scary things, right? So we see the Buddha very compassionate in his approach. There are other interesting parts of the story, but I think for the moment that's enough to show you the Buddha is willing to be compassionate in his approach. So coming back to this idea about death, right? So definitely when we talk about death, we need some sense of comforting, some sense of confidence, peace, joy. What is it all about? We ask ourselves all these meanings. So now, before we actually understand death, we also should understand life, because they go together. You see. Now, having said that, we can actually even think in this way. We can say, as Buddhists, that there is really no such thing as death. I mean, if you understand the Buddha's teaching, see, basically, what dies? We don't say who dies, we say what dies. Okay? Only the body dies. Because the body, remember the previous lesson, the body is made of 4 elements. That means all the organs are functioning and so on. So once there is imbalance, something goes wrong somewhere, some vital organs stop functioning, that's the end. You see? The whole body ceases to function. It's very complicated, this body. So it's the body that ceases to exist, but the mind goes on and on and on. Samsara is the mind, actually. The mind doesn't end. The mind goes on and on. So this mind is reborn elsewhere. Okay? It's just like when we are sleeping, the closest to death is sleeping. When you're asleep, the body is as good as dead, But your mind, you're aware, you're dreaming, maybe. Usually we are dreaming all the time, you see. When you're aware of your mind working, you're dreaming. Because your mind is working all the time, even when you're sleeping. But usually we're not aware of it. Because our mind, let's say this is the activity level, then your mind goes deep down, you're resting, so you don't notice the thoughts of your mind. See? But when you're aware, yes, you notice all these activities of your mind. You see? And I have lots of interesting dreams, lately, because as the more you do sutta work, the more interesting your dreams become. All right? A lot of teaching goes on also, even in my dreams. So, in other words, this mind is working all the time. Consciousness is working all the time. Consciousness doesn't die. Okay? Consciousness moves on to the next life. But this consciousness is a very basic kind of consciousness. Like in a dream, like that, very basic. It's like, biologically, what is carried on from mother to child? The genes, we say, scientists say genes, right? The word gene means something that grows, something that generates. In fact, the word generate and gene come from the same root, okay? Genes are like a code, you see, it's got all those tiny little, I don't know what you call, data that records your behavior, So these genes are carried on physically to the next life, next body rather, okay? And it goes on like that. Now, if that happens to the body, you only need to imagine the mind also has some kind of mental genes, if you like, or better, karmic genes. Now, these are just words, Then karmic gene is not a thing; it's a thought. All right. So it is meaningless to us. Where is thought? Now, it's definitely not in the brain. Okay. Yes, in ancient times they try to say it's in the heart. You see, actually, it's your whole body. All right. But it depends how developed you are, okay? In the case of animals, their consciousness is very body-based. In human beings, it's a little uncertain. For humans who are not so well developed, yes, their consciousness is very body-based. They're very sensitive to their body. But notice, if you are a meditator, you can sense other people also. You can more or less feel what other people are thinking. You connect with other people, right? So there's a saying in meditation, we should cultivate a broad mind, an open mind, a big heart. That means we accept people more. So our minds are able to reach out to others. Notice in your loving kindness meditation, we say, may I be well and happy. You start with yourself. May the people here be well and happy. And then we send out our consciousness more and more, cover the whole country, Southeast Asia, the whole world, the whole universe. So our mind, we are capable of thinking of the whole universe. My cat can't do that. Okay? Animals can't do that. But human beings, we can. We can extend our minds. Now imagine if your mind is so powerful, you can, without going to a certain place, make something happen there. Now we can do it, of course, but not through magical powers. We can write letters, we use a computer, we can from where we are, make things happen far away. That itself is quite magical already. It's possible as humans. See? But imagine, sometimes people can claim they read thoughts, They say, oh, I sense especially mothers and child, twins, they seem to be able to communicate through thoughts. So in other words, thoughts are like radio waves. Now imagine if radio waves can be received through your phone. What about human thoughts? I would say it's possible. It's just that at the moment, we have no way of measuring it. We have no way of knowing it. But it's possible. Okay? So my point here is that there is this consciousness that moves on after the body ceases to function. Now, if that's the case, then there is no such thing as death. It's just that this consciousness moves to a new body. This consciousness takes up a new kind of, it's reborn to a mother, and then it grows, and then it becomes adult, and so on. Okay? Because some people think that, wow, being reborn is such a nice thing, Imagine if you are reborn as a human being, you're going to go back to school, That thought alone, is quite, say, what? Go back to school? Primary school and so on, right? Because some people may enjoy it, I don't know. But the point is, we're going to repeat a lot of things we do, life after life after life after life, right? So that is what life and death is, how it connects, Now, even the Buddha has to die. Right? All the world religions, they may talk about eternal life, but all the world teachers also die. The Buddha never said, I live forever. Some religion try to say, their teachers live forever. It becomes meaningless to say there is such a thing as living forever. Because there's nothing is forever. Nothing in this universe is forever. Even the universe itself is changing. The fact that the Buddha dies is the final proof that his teaching is true. Because the Buddha said everything is impermanent. All things that exist must change. In fact, we can even simplify this and say, to exist is to change. If you exist, you must change. Look at ourselves now. 50 years ago, my ideas about Buddhism and my ideas now have changed a lot. And it's okay to change. It's good to change. That's how you grow. You change over time. Change means also growth. Right? So that's a very important meaning of life. That life is change. Now, where does death come in here? Now imagine you have something very precious. You protect it so that it doesn't get spoiled. Right? You have a very wonderful new phone. You take good care of it. Because it's very expensive, it's very good. So you don't want to get spoiled. You want to use it as long as possible. All right? But phones are not a very good example because they are fashionable. Even if the phone lasts long, after you get sick of it, you're going to get a new one. Okay? But you can't do that with your life, Right? You can't do that with the lives of people you love, people who are near and dear to you. But because you know that people who are near and dear to you do not last forever, you begin to treasure them. You begin to value them. We had a very nice 70th birthday gathering last week. A lot of nice things to it. Normally birthdays are like that. But then I tell my friends, I said, hey, you all are celebrating. Actually, we should not be celebrating, we should be crying, Because 70 years old, I got hardly 20 more years to go at the most, And you can't do much, So you got to treasure every day, every moment. It's not actually a birthday, you should call it a death day, and get together and say, and give eulogies to each other, And we normally give eulogies to the dead, right? And the dead can't hear you. You say all the nice things, what you would have done, but the guy is already dead. Actually, you are celebrating this guy is dead. You're very happy he's dead, But then it's meaningless, So I tell my friend this Sunday, on my Facebook, I said, you want to say any nice thing, eulogy, please send it now. Don't say after I'm dead, I can't hear you. So maybe write a nice eulogy. Imagine your friend is dead, write a nice eulogy. And I'm sure you write very nice things there. And if your living friend reads it, it's going to be very happy. So death puts greater value in life, you see. You begin to tell yourself, wow, I don't have much time, So I better use my time wisely. I better use it in a quality way. That's what motivates me to work, see? That it gives me the energy to work. That's number one, it gives you energy. Number two, it gives you love. You begin to care for people who are important to you, right? So death is not necessarily a bad thing. If there's no death, I don't think we care for each other that much, I saw one movie, on this, I think, was it Star Trek? Where they landed on this planet, and there was this guy, for some reason, couldn't die. So he's always fighting some aliens, and he gets shot. After he comes back to life, And this happens to him over and over again. And he said, this is getting really boring, I can't die. And I keep fighting these aliens for centuries, So you begin to really pity this person who has eternal life. He can't die. He's doing this thing again and again, So remember, eternal life is not really a blessing, But we are reborn. That's different, Because when you're reborn, you can change. You can become better and better. Okay? Your wisdom grows. Wisdom means you begin to see things around you, and you begin to see how they factor in with it, how they connect to make sense of what's going on. So now you have heard of the Four Noble Truths. First truth is there is suffering. And you look around this world, things are never perfect. That's the first truth. The truth of dukkha. Nothing is perfect in this world. Number two, the reason for this is because we have craving. We are all the time looking out there. Okay? Now these two gives the meaning of life. Life is not perfect. Life is impermanent. Life is changing all the time. And this changing makes us want things. This impermanence makes us, in the wrong way, want to collect things. We think, for example, that having a lot of things, we are safe, right? In a rich society like Singapore, having a lot of money makes us feel safe. But then, like that famous, notorious story about John D. Rockefeller. He fell sick one day. No doctors could cure him. Remember the story? So many doctors came, expensive doctors. They tried all kinds of stuff, could not cure him. No, the richest guy in the world at that time. He couldn't get well. Finally, one doctor came, and his doctor told him one thing, just one thing. He says, Mr. Rockefeller, I don't think any doctor can cure you. You will never be cured because your sickness is not in the body. It's your overworking, your worries, and if you worry about your money, you will never get well, you won't have the time to spend it. And this happened to me once, because there was this stock and shares guy, one of those top guys in the opposite office where I used to work, in the Shenton Way, SGX. He deals with money. So he's so busy that he can't come for meditation class. So he asked me to go to the house, You should see him at the house. He looks really a wreck. He looks okay, but then he looks so tired and so on. I told him, okay, let's do breath meditation, sit quietly. And I said, you just count your breath, okay? In, out, one. In, out, two. He looked at me and says, how do you do that, I said, wow, is that bad? He couldn't even count the meditation, So I had to guide him very carefully, Then I remember the story of Rockefeller. So I told him, I said, you're making a lot of money, right? Now, you know what he said? He said his work is very stressful. When the money goes up, his heartbeat goes up. When money goes down, it goes down also. Up, down, you see. So I told him, you got to rethink yourself. I said, your money, your life which is more precious, no? This money is not your life. You got to distance yourself a bit, see things really in a real situation. You better tell yourself, what do you want in life? You may have no life to spend all the money that you have made. You see? So that was the best advice I could give him, because he has so much money but no health. Right? So there you are, meaning of life. So death gives that meaning to our life, right? Not to have craving. Now the next two truths, third noble truth and fourth noble truth. Okay, third noble truth says this suffering can be ended by letting go, nirvana. And then truth number 4 is the way to do it. Okay, so that's our purpose of life, right? So noble truth 1 and 2 is meaning of life. Noble truth 3 and 4, purpose of life. Our life is to overcome suffering. Wow, that's a big statement to make, right? It's not easy. So let's simplify it. The purpose of life is to learn. Very simple. Learn. Learn means improve yourself. You know? I often say this anyway. For example, to young people, I would say, when they're in love, I would tell them, to love is to learn, right? If you love someone, you got to learn about this person. You don't just admire the body. You got to learn the nature of this person, the character of this person, how to respond to this person. So you can say, basically, if you talk about this kind of sequence of how to behave, what does it mean to live? To live, you must have quality in life, is to love. To love is to learn. Right? And then to learn is what? To learn is to be at peace with yourself. Right? So it goes like that. So this is the purpose of life. We learn about life itself. We look around, what do we see? The most common thing we see is that everything changes. And there lies the secret of Buddhism, you see. How to awaken, become like the Buddha. It's okay if you can't meditate, you cannot sit for hours watching your breath. There's a very simple meditation. You watch impermanence. You will never fail. Wherever you go, just observe. Everything changes. Even when you watch movies, especially if you regularly watch movies, you find, start by watching these actors when they're very young, I remember I watched this show by DiCaprio, when I was very young. He was a young boy, he was a very good actor by then. And now he's very old. And you look at him, wow, the change is dramatic, And some actors don't grow old graciously. They become really ugly, And you look at them and say, you can't believe it's them, So it's a shock to you. Someone so beautiful can become so old and ugly. You say, wow, what's there to be attached to? What so-called beauty, So it's impermanent. Now we are also like that, you see, right? We are very cute and young, and then grow old, we became fat and ugly, you see. So we are also like that. So we got to accept this and ask ourselves, what do I learn from this? Ask yourself. Now I can't tell you what you learn from this. You will discover a sense of the bigger picture. You become happier with fewer things which are really meaningful to you. All right? You learn to let go of having. You understand the meaning of being more deeply. Having, the word, when you say I have something, it always refers to something outside of you. But if you talk about being, that means you become that feeling. For example, you say, I am happy. And that's a very good way of saying something. But if you say, I have a lot of money, I have a lot of friends, I have a lot of houses, fine. But you cannot say, I have a lot of happiness. No, you say, I am happy. So that's the difference, you see. What you have, the Buddha says, is not yours. This whole world is not yours. This world is not yours. Do not grasp it, the Buddha said. This world is not yours. In other words, we live here like a tenant, you see, this planet, The flowers are there, very beautiful, but they're not yours. But you can enjoy it, smile at it, and you'll feel happy. You are the flower, and you feel happy. Yes, that's fine. So this is what the monks do. They're happy by just being there, without owning much. The real monks of the Buddha. See? So that's how you become happy, right? For example, you come here and listen to the Dharma talk. I mean, you're not really getting anything, right? I'm not giving you anything substantial. You're not going away with lots of money or a lot of things or whatever. I'm not giving you any prize for listening long, So, but then something's happening inside you, even as you sit here quietly, you see. You begin to think. The most wonderful thing that anyone can give to you is the idea of thinking wisely, of using your mind in such a way that you see things more clearly and you know what to do best in your life. If someone can do that to you, that's really wonderful. And the Buddha does that to all of us. It's the Buddha. So don't say I'm the one doing it. It's the Buddha who teaches us all these things. Alright? So that's the purpose of life. Okay? Alright, so I talked about a bit of meaning of life, impermanence. Purpose of life is to learn, to grow, to be free from suffering. Okay?